Hello everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into a heartfelt story about the moment Tu Tieu risked everything to save a child, only to face a life-changing accident that completely transformed her relationship with Uri. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next episode. That afternoon, just like she did almost every day, Tu Tieu showed up at Uri's office carrying a warm lunchbox. The scent of freshly cooked food drifted gently through the air as she stood near the front gate, occasionally peeking inside the building as if expecting Uri to suddenly walk out with that familiar smile of his. She shifted her weight a little, hugging the lunchbox to stay warm, completely unaware that her ordinary day was about to turn into something terrifying. Across the street, a little boy wriggled out of his mother's grasp. His ball slipped from his tiny hands and rolled right into the road. Without a second thought, the boy darted after it, straight into the path of a motorbike speeding down the lane. People on the sidewalk gasped. A few tried to shout, but it all happened too fast for anyone to react, except for Tu Tieu. She didn't hesitate, not for a heartbeat. She set the lunchbox down, took off in a sprint, and lunged toward the boy. Her hands wrapped around him just as the motorbike screeched desperately, skidding sideways. She managed to pull the child onto the sidewalk, shielding him with her body. The motorbike clipped her leg as it swerved, the impact sharp and sudden. The world tilted. Tu Tieu hit the pavement hard, pain shooting up her leg like fire. The boy was safe, crying, but unharmed. But Tu Tieu? She couldn't get up. Her breath came in shaky bursts, her palms scraped raw, her knees burning from the fall. She tried to push herself upright, but instantly winced, her leg giving out beneath her. Inside the company, Uri had heard the commotion. The moment someone shouted something about an accident, he bolted out the door. His eyes scanned the street, and then he saw her. Tu Tieu, sitting helplessly on the ground, clutching her leg. His stomach dropped. He rushed over, practically sliding onto his knees in front of her. "Oh my God! Tieu, are you okay? What happened? Can you stand?" His voice shook uncontrollably as he reached out to support her. Tu Tieu tried to give him a brave smile, but the moment she shifted, agony shot through her. Her expression tightened instantly, betraying just how much pain she was in. "It's okay. I'm fine," she murmured, though her trembling hands said otherwise. People around them hurried to call an ambulance. Uri stayed by her side the whole time, refusing to move even an inch away from her. When the paramedics finally arrived, he climbed into the ambulance with her, holding her hand so tightly it almost hurt. Like letting go would make her disappear. After a quick examination, the doctor explained her injuries: severe soft tissue damage and a bad sprain. Nothing life-threatening, but she would need to stay off her feet completely. 1 to 2 weeks in a wheelchair. Strict rest. Uri nodded at every instruction like a soldier receiving orders. When he wheeled her out of the hospital, he was still holding the lunchbox she had brought him earlier, now cold, the steam long gone. But he barely noticed. All he could think about was how easily he could have lost her. How one split second could have changed everything. Sitting in the wheelchair, Tu Tieu lowered her gaze and whispered, "I didn't want you to worry." Uri knelt beside her, taking her hand as if it was the most fragile thing in the world. "Tieu," he said softly, "as long as you're safe, that's all that matters. Forget the rest. Just focus on healing. I'll take care of everything from now on." That evening, Uri cooked dinner himself. He brought each dish to her bedside, setting them down carefully as if he were serving someone made of glass. He helped her sit upright, adjusted her pillows, and kept checking her leg every few minutes, asking if it hurt or if she needed anything. Water, a blanket, another pillow, literally anything. And strangely, the house didn't feel gloomy. If anything, it felt warmer, like the accident had shaken both of them, reminding them how deeply they were connected. The next morning, the real challenge began. Without her usual freedom to move around, their small home felt unfamiliar. Tu Tieu, who was always buzzing from room to room, cleaning, cooking, or just humming as she worked, now sat in a wheelchair with her left leg wrapped tightly in bandages. The doctor had been clear. No pressure on that leg. But the pain wasn't what bothered her the most. It was the helplessness, the inconvenience, the idea of depending on Yuri for every little thing. So, of course, the first thing she tried to do in the morning was stand. She placed her hands on the wheelchair's armrests and began to push herself up. But before she could even straighten her back, Yuri appeared like a lightning bolt. "No," he said firmly, gently pushing her back into the seat. "You're not getting up." The doctor was very clear. "I'm just trying to make some tea," she protested, pouting like a child caught sneaking candy. Yuri crouched down so their eyes were level. "If you stand up even one time, the pain will come back. I'll make it for you. No arguments." Tu Tieu puffed out her cheeks, but didn't resist. She watched, half amused and half helpless, as Yuri went into the kitchen. Normally, she would have boiled water, prepared the leaves, and brewed everything in under 2 minutes. Yuri somehow turned it into a 10-minute battle. He nearly let the water boil over, spilled some on the counter, and fumbled with the teapot lid like it was a puzzle he'd never seen before. Tu Tieu couldn't hold it in. She started laughing quietly behind her hand. Yuri looked over his shoulder. "Don't laugh. I'm doing my best." I know, but you look adorably clumsy." His ears turned bright red. "Adorable? I'm a man, you know." Which, of course, only made her laugh harder. Later that afternoon, Yuri set her laptop on a small, foldable table in front of her so she could work from the wheelchair. But every time she reached for something, a pen, a paper, even her water bottle, Yuri would rush over like she was inches away from catastrophe. "Calm down," she said finally. "I'm just grabbing a pen." "But what if leaning forward hurts your leg?" "If it hurts, I'll scream." "Don't scream," Yuri yelped. "My heart can't take that." His serious tone made her choke on her laughter. When evening came around, Yuri announced he was going to cook a proper, impressive dinner. Tu Tieu wasn't convinced, but she let him try. Within minutes, smoke wafted out of the kitchen. She turned her head and saw Yuri waving a spatula through a cloud of smoke, coughing dramatically. "It's fine. Everything is under control," he shouted. "I think the egg is burnt," she called back. No, it's just a darker shade." In the end, they shared instant noodles. But because Yuri made them himself, and because he kept checking if she liked the flavor, it felt like the most heartfelt meal she'd ever eaten. That night, he helped her into bed. He tucked the blanket around her gently and stared at her injured leg. His face clouded with worry. Tu Tieu reached for his hand. "I'm okay," she whispered. "It's just a few weeks." Yuri lowered his head. "But seeing you fall, it scared me more than you know." She smiled softly and brushed her fingers across his cheek. "I'm still here, still in one piece, still with you." He sat beside her, holding her hand as if it anchored him. I promise. No matter what, I'll be right here." And for the first time that day, both of them finally felt at peace. The first few days after the accident passed in a rhythm that neither of them had ever experienced before. Their small home, usually filled with the sound of Tu Tieu bustling around, sweeping the floor, humming while she cooked, tapping her feet lightly as she moved from room to room, now felt strangely quiet. The wheelchair parked beside the sofa became a constant reminder of how suddenly everything had changed. But what surprised Tu Tieu most wasn't the pain in her leg. It was how uncomfortable she felt relying on Uri for even the simplest things. She loved him deeply, but being taken care of so completely made her feel fragile, and she hated feeling fragile. On the third morning, she woke up early out of habit. The sun was barely rising, and warm light spilled gently into the room. She blinked, sat up, and stared at the ceiling for a moment before instinctively swinging her legs to the edge of the bed, only for a sharp sting to shoot up her injured leg. She winced. Before she could even reach for the wheelchair, she heard rapid footsteps. Uri burst into the room, holding a mug of warm water. "What are you doing?" he demanded, eyes wide with panic. Stretching?" she tried. "Nope, absolutely not. You were about to stand," Uri said, setting the mug down and rushing to her side like a detective catching someone at a crime scene. "I just wanted to brush my teeth." "I can help with that." "You can't brush my teeth for me, Uri." "Okay, you're right. But I can help you get to the sink." He slipped an arm around her back and another beneath her knees, lifting her gently as if she weighed nothing. Tu Tieu let out an embarrassed squeak. "Put me down. I can hop on one leg." "You are not hopping anywhere," Uri declared. "This is the safest way." "This is mortifying," she muttered, burying her face in her hands. Uri chuckled. "Nope, this is called being cared for. You should try accepting it." He lowered her onto the wheelchair carefully, then pushed her toward the bathroom. The whole time, she sat stiffly, pretending not to notice how proud he looked just steering a wheelchair in a straight line. Later that afternoon, Uri organized all her work things onto a movable table so she could do light tasks from the living room. But even then, he hovered like a constant shadow. "Do you need water?" "No." "How about a snack?" "No." "A blanket? You look a bit cold." "Uri." "Yes?" "Sit. Down." He froze for a moment like a confused puppy, then slowly lowered himself onto the couch, eyes still glued to her as if he were guarding a priceless artifact. A few minutes passed. He lasted almost 5. Then, "Do you need help adjusting your—" "You or I?" He flinched. "Sorry, I just worry." She softened. "I know, and it's sweet, but you don't have to panic every time I breathe." Uri exhaled dramatically. No promises. That evening, he prepared dinner again, determined to redeem his previous dark-shaded egg. He insisted on making something more complicated. Fried rice with vegetables, chicken, and eggs. Mixing everything together sounded harmless enough, so she let him try. 5 minutes in, loud clattering noises came from the kitchen. 10 minutes in, the smell of something suspicious drifted out. 15 minutes in, smoke. Tu Tieu pinched the bridge of her nose. "Uri, should I be concerned?" "No," he replied confidently, though he was clearly fanning smoke away from the stove, eyes squinting. "Uri, it's under control." "Uri, okay, it's somewhat under control." When he finally presented the meal, the rice was unevenly cooked, the chicken pieces were questionable, and the vegetables had completely surrendered. But when she took a bite, she smiled genuinely. "It's good," she said. Yuri raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to lie." "I'm not lying. You made it for me. That makes it good." Yuri stared at her for a long moment, then grinned, cheeks slightly flushed. "Fine. But tomorrow, we're ordering food." She giggled. "Deal." Later that night, Yuri guided her to bed like he always did now, lifting her, adjusting the pillows, checking the bandages on her leg. His hands moved carefully, almost reverently. When he finished tucking the blanket around her, he sat next to her on the edge of the bed, worry clouding his gaze. "Does it still hurt?" he asked softly. "A little," she admitted, "but it's manageable." Yuri took a deep breath, rubbing the back of his neck. "I keep replaying that moment in my head. You falling, the way you screamed. I can't get it out of my mind." "You didn't even see the fall," she reminded him gently. "I know," he said, "but I felt it. The second someone shouted your name, I swear my heart stopped." She reached for his hand, fingers intertwining with his. "Uri, look at me." He did. "I'm here, safe, healing, and you didn't lose me, so quit torturing yourself." Uri's shoulders sagged with relief, even if he still looked shaken. He bent down and rested his forehead against her hand. "I'm going to do everything I can to keep you safe," he murmured, "even if it means learning how to cook something other than instant noodles." She laughed quietly. That might be the biggest miracle of all. Uri lifted his head, eyes warm and filled with a mixture of love and fear and devotion all at once. "You're everything to me, Tu Tieu. I don't care if you're walking, sitting, or rolling around in a wheelchair. I just want you with me, always." She brushed her thumb over his cheek. "And I'm not going anywhere." They stayed like that for a long moment, her hand in his, their breaths soft and steady. The room felt so peaceful, she could hear the faint ticking of the clock and the quiet hum of the night outside. When she finally leaned her head against his shoulder, he wrapped an arm around her gently, pulling her close. And just like that, the fear of the wheelchair, the frustration, the helplessness, it all felt smaller, softer, easier to breathe through. Because Uri was there. Clumsy, overprotective, dramatic, but loving her with every piece of his heart. And for Tu Tieu, that was enough to make even the most difficult days feel warm. The days ahead wouldn't be easy. She knew that. There would be discomfort, limitations, and moments when she'd feel frustrated again. But as she closed her eyes, listening to the gentle rhythm of Yuri's heartbeat beside her, one thing became clear. She wouldn't be facing any of it alone. And sometimes, that made all the difference. The story follows Tu Tieu, who brings lunch to Uri's workplace every day. One afternoon, she saves a little boy from an oncoming motorbike, but the impact leaves her with a severe leg injury that forces her into a wheelchair for weeks. Uri rushes to her side, terrified, and becomes completely devoted to caring for her during her recovery. As Tu Tieu struggles with helplessness and frustration, Uri tries his best, even if clumsily, to cook, help her work, and make her feel supported. Their home, once routine, turns warm and tender as Yuri's worry and affection deepen. Through burnt meals, awkward moments, and quiet late-night conversations, the accident brings them closer, reminding them how fragile life is and how much they mean to each other. Despite the challenges, their love grows stronger as they face each day together.